Okay. Am I mute? I'm good. Okay. So we're in Daf Lamed. I'm in base in the very last line, the very beginning of Parak Beis Shammai. So it's named Parak Beis Shammai because it starts with the words Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai Omrim. Beis Shammai says, they say hekdesh tos hekdesh. If a person makes a hekdesh mistakenly, they sanctify something mistakenly. It doesn't matter that it was under mistaken pretenses. They didn't know what they were doing. It still counts. So Beis Hillel says no. Ain't hekdesh. It doesn't count. So Kate said, what would be an example of this? So Amar Ashur Shachar Shiyatzmi Beisi Rishon Areo hekdesh. A person says, well, I'm going to sanctify the first ox that comes out of my house. I think it's going to be black. That's presumably what he means. But he says, the black ox that comes out first, I want it to be hekdesh. But it turns out he was wrong. The ox that came out wasn't black. It was white. Yatzalovin. So Beis Shammai Omim, it's okay. He meant the first one. He by mistake he said black because he thought it was going to be black. So it's still hekdesh. Beis Hillel Omim ain't no hekdesh. Beis Hillel says no. He said black. It was white. Okay, it's black and white. It's clear that it's not hekdesh. So dinar zahav. Similarly, a person says, I'm going to pick up a coin, and the first coin that I pick up is going to be sanctified to the Beit HaKabayis, the Beis HaMikdash. I expect it to be gold. So the first gold coin that I pick up, dinar zar sheyalu yadu rishon areu hekdesh shokesef, but it turns out he picked up a silver coin. Shami Amim doesn't matter. He thought it would be gold. It turned out it was silver. It's still hekdesh. He still Amim ain't no hekdesh. He says no. It was done under mistaken pretenses. He thought it would be gold, and it turned out to be silver. It's not hekdesh. It's hekdesh betos. Tos hekdesh. Okay, so chavish shoyayin. Similarly, a person says the first barrel of wine that I'm going to pick up, that's going to come into my possession. I have a bunch of barrels in my cellar. I'm going to take out a barrel, and I'm going to make it into hekdesh. Most of the barrels in my cellar are wine. So I expect it to be wine. We also show seven. It turns out he also has oil barrels of oil in his cellar, and the barrel that ended up in his hands was a barrel of oil. So Beis Shammai Omrim, that is hekdesh tos, and therefore it doesn't matter. Hekdesh tos is hekdesh. Hekdesh, even though he expected that it would be wine and it ended up being oil, it's still hekdesh. So no. Hekdesh tos is not hekdesh. Ain't no hekdesh because it was not what he thought it was going to be, and therefore it's not sanctified. So these are three illustrations of the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. But we'll see that even though Beis Shammai does hold by this principle that hekdesh tos is hekdesh, this is not necessarily the most glowing example of that, because here he really had in mind whichever one comes out first. I want to be hekdesh, and he just said, the ox, the black ox, because he thought it was going to be the black one, but he would be perfectly happy if it would be the white one. So that's not necessarily a classic case of hekdesh tos, but okay. So the Gemara is going to explore this machlokes. Beis Shammai Omrim hekdesh v'chulei. So my tamayo the Beis Shammai. What's the reason of Beis Shammai? So we're going to have a couple of answers. First answer on this it is the alpina and tchilas hekdesh misof hekdesh, because we draw a parallel between how hekdesh is created and how hekdesh is manifested after it's created. Matzemura, so temura is a sof hekdesh case, meaning I already have an animal that's been sanctified, and now I say about another animal that it's going to be temura. It's going to be an exchange with this animal. But the first animal that was sanctified, I thought it was an olah, and it turned out that it was a shlamim. I thought it was a shlamim, and it turned out it was an olah. It doesn't matter. Afilu betos, it still accounts as hekdesh, a special halacha with respect to temura. So that's so hekdesh. So too afilu. So matzmura afilu betos, af hekdesh afilu betos. Even when you're creating the sanctity to begin with, you don't have an animal that was already sanctified, and you're just substituting the kedusha, in which case the new animal becomes sanctified, and the old animal also remains sanctified. So too the creation of sanctification in the first place, even if it was done under mistaken premises. Beis Hillel says no. Tamura is a special case because the hekdesh had already been created, so it's easier even betos to transfer the hekdesh. But that is about achusi hekdesh betos lamachtinan. But in order for hekdesh to descend in the first place, it does not descend in the first place unless it is done with a correct premise, but not under mistaken pretenses. The Beis Shammai, so Beis Shammai, we say, wait a second. If you're drawing your analogy from Tamura, so if I had a case of Tamura where I say animal number 2 is going to become hekdesh instead of animal number 1, but this hekdesh won't take place until 12 o'clock noon. I'm making the statement at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I say it's not going to be counted until 12 o'clock noon. So I still would have to wait until 12 o'clock noon for the hekdesh to be chal. So Beis Shammai, it's only going to happen later today at 12 noon. It's not going to become a tmura right away. I would have to wait until 12 o'clock noon. So therefore, shouldn't I say the same thing over here? So here as well, shouldn't I say that I should wait until there is a black ox that goes out? And since he has said the first black ox that goes out is going to be hekdesh, so when the white ox goes out, so if I'm comparing it to Tamura, so it's not time yet for the sanctity to descend. So I'm a papa, no. That's why he said, what was the lashon that he said in the Mishnah? He said, sure, shachor, shiyatsa mi beisi, yetze mi beisi. He said rishon. He didn't say 12 noon. He didn't say the second ox or the third ox or the 10th ox. If he said the second ox, so or the first time that a black ox should leave my house or should leave the stable, so that's a different story. But he said the first ox that leaves, so that happens, that it's going to be black. But he said the first ox. So I'm a papa l'kach nema rishon l'kshiyetze rishon. He meant whichever ox is going to be the first ox, even if it's under mistaken pretenses, according to Beis Shammai, that's going to be hekdesh. It's not analogous to the Tamura case where the person says that the kedusha of the second animal will not descend upon the animal until 12 noon. The Gemara asks, no, but didn't he say that he specifically wants only a black ox? Now the next line is subject to a different girsa than what we have over here, so we're going to go with the girsa of Rashi or the Mefarish over here, who says like this, that Milo Askinan the Ispain train otlas. Are we not speaking about a case where he had 2 or 3 animals, right? That in the comment that he did not want, that he had 2 or 3 black animals, and he's saying that I want specifically this black animal, not the other black oxen that I have, so that he really specifically is targeting only the black one, and therefore we should wait until the black one comes out. So the answer that the Gemara gives, according to the Girsa of the Mefarish, is lo tzricha teleisle shachor elachad. No, he only has one black ox. So therefore, when he said the first one, he didn't mean the first of the black oxes. He meant the first of any of my oxen, because he couldn't have been targeting like the subclass of black oxen, since he only had one black ox. So why did he have to say? He could have just said shachor black, and I would have known to wait for the black ox. The fact that he also added, and he said Rishon, meant that what he really cared about is that it would be the first ox. He just happened to think that the first ox was going to be black, and he made a mistake. And since according to Beis Shammai, hekdesh tos is hekdesh, therefore it's still going to be hekdesh.
What he's doing is he's saying, I bet you the first ox that comes out will be black, and it's not black.
It's not black, but nonetheless,
and that's the reason why, according to Beis Hillel, that it's not okay.
You better believe it. That's Beis Hillel. So very good. So Eddie was showing us in the Haftarah for the next slide. Beis Hillel, man. So Beis Hillel says no. That's not a reason for it to be hekdesh. Imkain sheyetze barishon mibaile. Then he should have said the one that comes out in the first one, but he said rishon. So therefore, the word rishon indicates that in the event that if it is the black one that comes out first, so then he's happy. But if the first one that comes out is white, then he's not going to be happy about it, and then it's not hekdesh. Otherwise, he would have said barishon and not rishon. Rishon means that it's very, very specific that he wants this specific color of ox. Otherwise, he would have added another letter. If all he cared about was that it be the first one that comes out, then he would have said barishon. That the Rosh has a different diuk that, according to the Rosh, is a diuk within Beis Hillel. It's the fact that he said mi beisi. Since he said mi beisi, so that indicates that all he cared about is which one is going to come out first from his house. Okay. So Amalei Rava Mibarnish Ravashi. So Rava Mibarnish said to Ravashi the following. He said, "Hi hekdesh betos hekdesh." What do you mean that we're saying that this is a classic example, so to speak, of the principle of Beis Shammai, that a mistaken sanctification, mistaken hekdesh is really hekdesh? Here, the way that we're teaching Beis Shammai, it's bekavano. It was that he's saying that I don't care whether it's black or white. I just want to sanctify the first one that comes out of my house. And my expectation is that he said is, I think it's going to be black. But really, the reason why it's chal is not because mistaken hekdesh is hekdesh, but because of the fact that he didn't really care so much it was black or white. He's just stating his expectation. I think it's going to be black. But really, the main thing that I care about is rishon, that it be whichever animal is the first one that comes out. So we say it's true that it's not classic hekdesh tos, but we're calling it hekdesh tos, elamishim dataye l'dibure, because of the fact that it sounds a little bit like he only wants black because he used the word black. So since it sounds that way, therefore we're calling it hekdesh tos, even though we're explaining, according to Beis Shammai, the reason it works is because at the end of the day, he doesn't really care whether it's black or white. He only intended to sanctify the first animal, the first ox that leaves his house. Besavi Beis Shammai. So now we're going to ask, is this really true what we're saying? Is this really true? Well, the Mishnah said it's true, but he says, Besavi Beis Shammai, hekdesh betos lo avi hekdesh. Is it true that well, the Mishnah says otherwise. Mishnah says that hekdesh tos is hekdesh according to Beis Shammai. And now Rava Mibarnish is saying to Ravashi that we can't really derive that from this Mishnah. From this Mishnah, we could say that hekdesh betos would not be hekdesh, but in this case, it was bekavana. He really just wanted, he used infelicitous language, but he really just wanted whichever animal would come out first to be hekdesh. So this is not really a case of hekdesh betos. So we could have argued then that from this case itself, that despite the Mishnah's description to the contrary, the Mishnah just meant he wasn't careful in his lashon, but really it wasn't classic hekdesh betos, and I could still maintain that according to Beis Shammai, hekdesh betos is not hekdesh, notwithstanding our Mishnah. But we have another Mishnah that would seem to indicate otherwise. That tonight we have a Mishnah that says, Misha neder v'nazir, a person makes a neder, v'nishal l'chachamim, and then he's not sure if the lashon that he used to make himself into a nazir really makes him into a nazir or not. So he goes to the chacham, he goes to the beis din, sits down in front of the CRC, v'hitiru, and we say, nah, your lashon wasn't really a lashon of nazirus. You're not a nazir. You never were a nazir. Go home. He says, I set aside animals for my nazirus. I set aside already achatas and ola shlomim. What am I going to do? So he said, it's okay. The animals were never considered to be sanctified because the whole thing was just one big mistake. You never were a nazir. So let them just go and graze in the pasture. We're not saying graze in the pasture until they get a blemish. No, they could just graze in the pasture. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you get. Shech them, graze with them, plow with them, do whatever you want with them. They never were sanctified. They never were sanctified, period.
It was never sanctified
because it was all a mistake. It was all a mistake. He thought it was a nazir. He used a certain lashon. He found out the lashon that he used did not make him into a nazir. It was all with toes. It was all a big mistake. Amu Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. So Beis Hillel used this opportunity, used this halacha that everyone agrees to us there, apparently. And they said to Beis Shammai, don't you see from here that we're right? That hekdesh, but that hekdesh tos is not hekdesh, and that's why the animals are not sanctified. See, from this case, hekdesh b'tosu, And we see that it's not considered to be hekdesh. So Mechlal, from the fact that Beis Hillel used that lashon in their comment to Beis Shammai, shows that they understood that according to Beis Shammai, hekdesh betos would in fact be hekdesh. My father savi Beis Shammai hekdesh betos havi hekdesh. So we say no, not necessarily. Just Beis Hillel made a mistake in terms of the shita of Beis Shammai. They read our Mishnah and somehow they thought, according to Beis Shammai, that hekdesh tells us hekdesh, and they realized that it was just a malitza, it was just an expression, because the person's kavanah was whichever animal comes up first, but they were infelicitous with their lashon. The Beis Hillel the katai savi tamayo the Beis Shammai. They thought the reasoning of Beis Shammai was because b'shum the hekdesh b'tos savi hekdesh. Ramilo and Beis Shammai, and Beis Shammai could have easily be taught it to them. No, la mishum hekdesh b'tosu ela mishum the tayli diburei kama. The whole reason in our Mishnah why the hekdesh is good is because he just was not careful in his lashon. But really, the reason it's hekdesh is because his kavanah wasn't a mistake. His kavanah was whichever animal, black or white, would leave the animal, would leave the house first, would leave the barn first. That would be sanctified. So again, Misavi Beis Shammai hekdesh b'tos lo ave hekdesh. You're telling me I should just disregard the wording of our Mishnah, reinterpret the Mishnah, say Beis Hillel misunderstood Beis Shammai as well. In reality, Beis Shammai is of the opinion that hekdesh b'tos is not really hekdesh. Are you kidding me? What about the following case? Tashma hayim halkin b'derech. I have six people who are walking on the street. Okay, Be'echad, we turn the page. All right, six yeshiva bachrim are walking on the street. All right, very scary scene. Be'echad bar kenegda, and there's some guy who like comes in front of them and says, "Oh, now I'm in trouble." Be'echad, be'amar echad. So one of these yeshiva bachrim said, "Hareni nazir shezef ploni." He said, I'll be a nazir if this is, if this is so and so, if this is Reuven. According to the way that the Mefarish here explains it, it means he didn't really think it was Ploni. Like thought it's somebody else, maybe a little bit of a doppelganger. He thought it's somebody else. Says, if it turns out it's really the other guy, then I'm going to be a nazir. He's like making a mistake. Maybe it does turn out it's the other guy. And one guy says, well, I'll be a nazir, if it's not so and so. Hareni nazir, and then the third guy says, Hareni nazir she'echan became nazir. I'm going to be a nazir if one of you guys is a nazir. He probably is saying something that would make him a nazir for sure. And then the fourth guy says, I'm a nazir. Nazir. That at least one of you is not a nazir. And then the fifth guy says, I'm a nazir. That both of you are a nazir. And then the sixth guy says, that all of us are a nazir. So Beis Shammai omim kulam nazirim. So Beis Shammai says that since every single one used the lashon of hareni nazir, even though a lot of them said things that were mistaken, it doesn't really matter because hekdesh tos is considered to be hekdesh. So therefore, they're all nazirim. They're all nazirim because they used the lashon of hareni nazir. It doesn't matter if it turns out that they were wrong. Oh, it was Ploni. It wasn't Ploni. Not everyone really should be a nazir. Nobody is a nazir. One person's a nazir. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Just by saying the Hareni Nazir.
That's right, because it says Hareni Nazir if, according to Beis Shammai, disregard the rest of the statement. We don't care whether the rest of the statement is right or wrong.
The second statement is
Either the second statement is correct, in which case we'll show you a Nazir, or it's incorrect, in which case it's a hekdesh tos, but you're still a Nazir because you said Hareni Nazir and hekdesh tos is hekdesh. So this clearly seems to indicate that according to Beis Shammai, hekdesh tos is hekdesh, and it makes you into a Nazir. Hekdesh b'tosu, right? V'hahacha hekdesh b'tosu, and Beis Shammai says that it doesn't matter, even though for sure some of these people said things that were inaccurate. Uketani kulam nazirim. So I mean, yeah, you're right. Savi Beis Shammai, absolutely. Beis Shammai, of course, holds that hekdesh b'tos havi hekdesh. The point is that mehacha, from this case, you could derive that mehahi lo, but from the case in our Mishnah about the first black ox that leaves the stable, you wouldn't be able to prove the point. You could argue that there it was really the kavanah that the person had in mind for sure, even whether the animal's black or white, he wants to make it hekdesh. And the reason we call it hekdesh b'tos is not really because it's hekdesh tos, or just because the person wasn't careful in their lashon. But yes, from this other case, you can absolutely derive that according to Beis Shammai, hekdesh tos is hekdesh. So Abaye lo kasakadaitik. Abaye says, let me give you the reasoning as to why it is that the animal, whether it's black or white, is hekdesh according to Beis Shammai. So we said Beis Shammai derived the Techilas Hekdesh Misof Hekdesh, right? So Abai gives a different approach. He says, Lokasaka Daitech, right? The first approach was just given by the stomach of the Gemara. So Abai Amar Lokasaka Daitech, the Kaim B'Tzafra. Nah, it's not that we're talking about in the morning. The person says, oh, whichever, with the black ox that comes out first, it's going to be Hekdesh. No, the ox already left the barn, okay? And the train already left the station. And lahaka b'maya skinan zekayim b'tira. It's already lunchtime, okay? It's lunchtime. V'ama shor shachar, and he says that first black ox that left my house early this morning, sheyatsa mi basi. It's already gone and left the barn. Sheyatsa mi basi rishon lehavi hekdesh. I want that ox to be hekdesh. And v'amalei, and they say to him, the first ox that left here, we have the video footage. You know, in those days they had video cameras for sure. So they said, we looked at the videotape. The videotape showed that the first ox that left this morning, it wasn't black, it was white. And he says, oh, had I known that the first ox that would have gone out was white, I wouldn't have said black. I could care less whether it was black or white. I just want that the first ox that left this morning should be Hekdesh. I thought it was black, but I have in mind that it should be Hekdesh even if it was white. So that's the case that we're talking about. How can you say that the interpretation of the Mishnah is that we're talking about the afternoon? Doesn't it say you have to add some words over here? Doesn't the Mishnah say that's going to leave? So we say Ema Shiyatza Kvar. No, just to change the wording a little bit, edit the Mishnah. So Shiyatza Kvar, it already left. Bakatani Dina Shilzari Shilzab, but the next case in the Mishnah was the Dina Shilzab, the first one that's Shiyala that I'm going to pick up. Shiyala. So Tani said, just change it, edit it a little bit. My goodness, is it so hard? Just get rid of one letter, scratch it out. Sha'Allah, it means that it already came up. You're saying the one that I already picked up. I think the first one was gold. This Hekdesh, it turns out so. He says, oh, I really just meant whichever one that was the first one I picked up. Chavish Yayin Shatale, but the Mishnah says with respect to the barrel of wine, whichever barrel of wine it turns out that I am picking up. So we say Tani she also. So we say nah. They just changed the wording of that line in the Mishnah as well. She also, we're talking about the one that I already picked up. Therefore, we say that the Hekdesh is a good Hekdesh according to Beis Shammai, because he's explaining that he didn't really care whether it was black or white. He just thought that it was black, but even if it's white, it's okay. And Beis Hill says no, since he made a mistake, so Hekdesh B'tos as tos beHekdesh to prevent something from becoming Hekdesh. So it doesn't matter that he doesn't care; it's still not Hekdesh. So Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said, "Uchma b'chivya lakia." So he says that let's say that I have white oxen, and it turns out that one of the oxen is black. Okay, I have, we talk about a black sheep, right? This is a black ox. It says a black ox is also like not a good thing. It's the black ox of the family. Oh, that's an insult because the white oxen are much better. So that's considered to be a bad thing if you have a flock of white oxen and one of them is black. So it kind of like stands out like a sore thumb, right? So the next line we'll skip because the box says you can erase it. So why not erase it? So Tanan, so we say in our Mishnah, let's look at our Mishnah. Does this comport or support the statement of Rav Chisda or not? Okay, wait, hold on. I hear people speaking. I don't want to cut off any questions. Somebody had a question? No? Okay, Eddie, you had a question before?
No.
Good. Shachar sheyatzami basi rishon hekdesh. So our Mishnah says if you have the ox that comes out from my house is going to be hekdesh, and he thought it was going to be black, and it turns out it was white, right? Or he thought that it was black, and it turned out, depending on how you learn, it turned out that it was white, right? So we're saying, so this is so kiksaka daitech kimakdish ba'ayin yirah makdish. So we're starting out working with the assumption somebody's going to sanctify one of their possessions to hekdesh, so they don't want to give to hekdesh like the best of their possessions that they want to keep for themselves. They're going to give to hekdesh kind of like the less choice of their possessions. So if they're going to sanctify an ox, they're going to sanctify the one that has the color that's less desirable for themselves, because what does hekdesh care? Kimakdish ba'ayin rab makdish. They're just going to sell it, whatever. Beis Shammai have hekdesh. And Beis Shammai is saying that this is hekdesh. So it must be that that's because the black ox is considered to be what is considered that the white ox is considered to be inferior. He thought it was black, and it turned out it was white, and we say it's a good hekdesh. Why is it a good hekdesh if the person only generally wants to be makdish that which is inferior? So it must be because the white is inferior. But Rav Chisda said that the white is considered to be superior. He says that if you have a black one amongst white ones, that's inferior. So, okay, wait a second. So if we've disproven, let's say for a moment, that we're going to assume we've disproven Rav Chisda, and that really the black ox is superior, the white ox is inferior, right? So we're going to have to switch it around. We'll say, according to Rav Chisda, no, that really that we're going to assume the white ox is superior. But what? That our initial supposition that a person wants their inferior possessions to be hekdesh is wrong. The person wants their superior possessions, ayin yafeh, to be hekdesh. That's why the yafeh, that's why the lavan is good, because the lavan is even better than the black one that he mentioned. So what about the next case then? Dina shozar shiyala biyadi risham. Person said, I want to be makdish the golden coin that I'm going to pick up, and it turns out it's a silver coin. No, that's hekdesh. That only works for sure. Silver is inferior to gold, and nobody's going to disagree with the silver being inferior to gold, less valuable than gold. And Shammai says it's hekdesh. So we see from here, no, that's clearly Velamai. The reason it's hekdesh is because it's ba'ayin ra makdish. And so next case, person says the barrel of wine that I'm going to pick up first. The Allah shel shemen, and it turns out that he picked up the barrel of oil. Beishamai yomim hekdesh. Beishamai says that is hekdesh. Wait, but now we've said that a person is makdish only that which is inferior, but oil is superior to wine. Hashem and adif miyayin. So we say now that we can still stick with our premise that the person wants to be makdish at that which is inferior. Imishimha lo kasha. It's not a kasha. But Galila shanu. We're talking about people who live in the Galil. In the Galil, the Chama adif mimishcha. They have like tons and tons of oil in the Galil, explains Rashi. And therefore, in the Galil, the wine is considered to be more valuable than the oil. So when it turns out being the oil, it really is inferior. But now we've said, okay, so we see that we can explain our Mishnah and Beis Shammai based on the assumption that the person is happy to be makdish that which is inferior. But then, if the person's happy in the Reisha, that it turns out to be a white oxen, that's why that's sanctified. So it must be a white ox is inferior, which would be a kasha to Rav Chisda. Back to our kasha and Rav Chisda. Reisha kasha to Rav Chisda. So Amalach Rav Chisda. So Chisda can answer. He says, no, it depends what. Sometimes white is superior. Sometimes white is inferior. Kiyami Basura de Kamanai. I'm talking about the oxen of the Kamanayans who live somewhere in Persia, and they would always use their oxen for plowing purposes. So for plowing purposes, you want a white ox. The Amar of Chisda, but when it comes for other purposes, like for eating purposes or using the hide purposes, so then other colors are considered to be better, and white then would be inferior, and that's how we can explain our Mishnah is talking about one of those cases. Amar Chisda gives you the entire breakdown. He says, which color do you want for what? If you want the hide, so then you want black. Black's good. Black is beautiful for hide. You want to eat it? You want red meat, right? Red meat. So that for sure is superior. You don't want white meat. That's good. But when is it that you want the white meat, the white oxen? You want the white oxen if you're using it for plowing purposes. That's the only case where I said white is superior. Our Mishnah is not talking about plowing, presumably. Amar Chisda, Uchma, Bechibia Lakia. Hi. The Tiddim of Chisda say, as a general principle, that if you have black amongst the white, it's always bad. White is always better. No. Kiami beside the Kamanai. That's only the oxen of the Kamanayans. They used it for plowing purposes. Next Mishnah. Naya Mishnah. Mishnah Nazir. A person took a neder to be a Nazir. He went to a Chacham. V'nishal l'chacham. I'm not sure if the lashon that I used really makes me into a nazir. He said, well, guess what? It did. And you're a nazir. And he said, whoa, I thought it didn't. And I've been drinking wine all this time and doing things that are very naughty for a nazir to do. The asro mone mishash another. So we say it doesn't matter. If he comes to the chacham 10 days after he took the neder, those 10 days he was drinking wine, thinking that he's not really a nazir, he still counts those 10 days. Those 10 days, he really still was a nazir. It counts. Rambam writes that he should add another 10 days at the end as a knas. Nishal l'chacham v'hitiro. If he, however, clarifies with the chacham that he really was not a nazir, so then we already mentioned the halacha that if haisalo behema mufreshes, if he had animals that he had set aside for his nazirus, and it turned out that they're not really, he didn't really need to sanctify them because he wasn't really a nazir. So then we say the animals are not sacred. It's a hekdesh tos and it's no hekdesh. Take say matira be'eder. So Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, this is a good proof for our position, isn't it? So I'm a Beis Shammai and a good proof against you guys. The Beis Shammai, yetem odim b'seshu hekdesh tos, take say matira be'eder. Don't you agree that we see from here that if a hekdesh tos, the animals just graze in the pasture and that we see it's not sanctified altogether? So Amalem Beis Shammai, so Beis Shammai says, no, I have a proof in the other direction. Don't you agree that if a person is having their animals go through the corral, and then every 10th animal they hit with a red stripe and they say this is going to be my behema, but they made a mistake in the counting, okay? When they said got to the 9th animal, instead of saying 9, they said 8 animals in the corral. Oh. So they said a Karalachi, Asiri, they called the 9th one a 10th one. And then when they got all confused, and then the 10th animal, they went back and they called the 10th animal the 9th animal. And then the 11th animal, they called the 10th animal. Shehuma Kudesh, and all 3 animals are Mekudesh, despite the fact that he clearly made a mistake in how he counted the 10th animal and the way that he labeled the 9th animal as the 10th animal and the way that he labeled the 11th animal as the 10th animal. Nonetheless, they're all Mekudesh, even though it was a toast. It's a special Gezeres HaKasuv that we learn from the Psukim in the Torah that have to do with the labeling of the Meiser Behema. That that the 10th one, or even the one that's called the 10th one, that's right next to the 10th one, it could be the 11th and the 9th one, that one is going to be Kodesh. So Amalem Beis Hillel said, that's not a good, you're trying to bring a proof to yourselves from your position to kind of distract me from the fact that I brought a proof against your position. Lo Hashevet Kidsho, that it's not because the person made the mistake with their counting with their rod and how they counted the animal when they hit the animal with the rod and the red streak that makes the animal into Kodesh. It's because of Xeris HaKasuv. It's a special Xeris HaKasuv. Asiri Kodesh. I'll bring a proof. If the person would have said about the 8th animal that went through the corral that it's the 10th one, the 12th one, that it's the 10th one, Shema Saklum, we know that doesn't work. It's Xeris HaKasuv. The Rambam calls it a special halacha Moshe Sinai of how we interpret the verse. Then it has to be samuch. It has to be one next to the 10th one that you made the mistake in order for it to count. Elakasav shekidesh hasiri kodesh hasiri kodesh hatashi mes achadasar, and the hasiri means that huta hasiri yeh kodesh. Yeh is the rabbos, hasivi is the rabbos, is kulan. That it includes the one that's samuch, the 9th one and the 11th one as well. But that's a special Xeris HaKasuv. But if you made a mistake that went beyond the Xeris HaKasuv, and the way that we darshan the Xeris HaKasuv Alachim Moshe Sinai, so then it wouldn't be hekdesh. So therefore, you have not disproven my position.
Ah,
Yeah.